If you're an anime fan, you've probably heard of a little studio named Bones. Bones is one of the most prolific anime studios in Japan today. And considering that this is the same studio that brought us classics like Ouran High School Host Club, Soul Eater, Mob Psycho 100, and My Hero Academia, it's really no surprise that they've amassed such a reputation. 2023 marked the 25th anniversary of Studio Bones. And so for this momentous occasion, it was announced that the studio would be working on a completely original anime project to commemorate its quarter of a century milestone. And that anime was Metallic Rouge. You guys can only imagine the excitement I felt when I heard of this anime. I mean, Bones is the same studio that worked on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is my all-time favorite TV show just ever. This is a studio that I in particular am very fond of because it was responsible for some of my most formative anime experiences. So to say that I was excited for Metallic Rouge, an anime that was being touted by Bones as a commemoration of its 25-year existence, was an understatement. Watching the trailers, I was greeted by a unique and vast futuristic world that was brought to life through both professional animation and beautiful art. The characters were designed wonderfully and looked like they had a lot of personality to them. And on top of that, it looked like there was just gonna be some really great action scenes as well. The more I saw from this anime, the more it seemed like it was going to be something I was going to fall in love with. Metallic Rouge was gonna be great. Okay, I'm just gonna be real with you here. You clicked on this video, you saw the title, you knew what you were getting into. I'm just going to say it like it is. Metallic Rouge is quite possibly one of the most disappointing anime I've ever seen in my life. It's bad, but at the same time, I don't want to needlessly just bash it or just say, it sucks without at least giving my reasons. I want to be fair to this anime, so before I get into my problems with it, I think I should at least discuss the things that this anime does right. Starting off, I really enjoyed a lot of the aesthetics in Metallic Rouge. Most of the environments the characters find themselves in are pretty interesting and use the anime's futuristic sci-fi setting to their advantage. Whether it be the neon glow of the cities on Mars, the run-down darkness that is the Neon Settlement, or the bright sterility of Earth's skyscrapers. Metallic Rouge's world feels like it has a history, and that's not really an easy thing to pull off. While we're still talking about aesthetics, I'd also like to talk about the characters' designs, because most of them are really great. Admittedly, I'm not really crazy about the gladiator suits that the proto-neons wear for battle. I don't know, they don't really stand out to me, and honestly, they look pretty generic. But the designs of the characters themselves are immaculate. I honestly kind of wish they would just ditch these Evangelion suits and just look like this the entire show. In particular, I love the main character Rouge Red Star's appearance. It's honestly pretty amazing. It's not too crazy, but it's also so just uniquely her. And by extension, I also just really like Rouge as a character in general. She has this aloof stoicism to her in certain scenes that makes her seem so cool. But this is often undermined by a tinge of immature naivety and, quite frankly, pettiness. She often gets into arguments with her handler Naomi and even refuses to give a child a piece of her chocolate when they're traveling on Mars. In a lot of ways, Rouge Red Star feels like a great character from a great show who just so happens to be trapped in a not great show. And I suppose with that, I should start getting into what makes this show not great. Metallic Rouge suffers from two main problems, which might not seem like a lot, but these two issues combined with one another is almost a guarantee to sink any story. The first issue being Exposition Overload! For me, watching Metallic Rouge is such a chore because it feels like the anime is expecting me to have a pen and paper ready to take notes. Characters are constantly throwing around names, words, and designations to the point that it becoms a mess, and it's difficult to keep track of all of it. It's like
Okay, right.
Alethea.
Oh, okay.
There's that.
Okay.
Divine
Facilitator.
Oh, right.
There's
Immortal
that.
Nine,
Okay.
now look, I'm not saying exposition is a bad thing. Often the worlds that certain anime are set in are incredibly complex and require exposition dumps like these so that everything can make sense for the viewer. That's definitely an important aspect of conveying a story, but it shouldn't be the main way the story is delivered. Characters should have a chance to feel like genuine characters instead of, well, exposition machines. And this feeds into something that I've noticed with storytelling in general. A lot of stories typically fall into two categories. Plot-driven stories where the most interesting thing happening in the narrative is the plot itself, or character-driven stories where the characters' emotions and interactions are the most important element. I've found that typically people will lean more or less to one side depending on what they personally prefer. However, I genuinely think both of these approaches to storytelling can work equally well. The characters just need to be conceived and written with the kind of story you want to tell in mind. Unfortunately, it does not feel like Metallic Rouge was written this way. So much time in Metallic Rouge is dedicated to developing and explaining the plot, the world, the history. You could potentially say that it's a more plot-driven narrative. However, the issue is that it doesn't feel like the characters were written with this in mind. The anime wants us to feel a deep connection for these characters and their struggles, but the issue is that it's hard to connect to a character when they feel less like a person and more like a vessel meant solely to deliver plot revelations and exposition. I just don't feel a lot for these characters because it never feels like we spend enough time with them in a meaningful way that helps develop them. And this brings me to the second main issue of Metallic Rouge's story. This is where I feel Metallic Rouge truly begins to fall apart. Heavy exposition alone is not going to kill a story for me so long as the pacing for the narrative accommodates it. If you're able to space out your story's exposition naturally, the concepts that you introduce are going to have more time to occupy the viewer's mind, and thus they're going to have an easier time understanding it. Metallic Rouge does not do this. The story for Metallic Rouge is honestly pretty complicated. It talks about war, prejudice, revolution, and how these things can affect the people involved in them. These are topics and characters that we should be given time to understand and feel the impact of. The issue is that Metallic Rouge rushes through all of this. The reason why so many of the characters feel like exposition machines as opposed to actual characters is because they're never given time to be anything else. And this goes double for the story. Like I said, the story is complicated and needs time to make an impression and impact. But the way the show rushes through it doesn't grant either of these things. And in the long run, it doesn't make for a very enjoyable watch. But oh, the anime is quite aware of this actually. And so it goes out of its way to make the show seem more interesting in the dumbest way possible. Plot twists. Around halfway through Metallic Rouge, the story begins piling on plot twist after plot twist after plot twist. It takes what was a boring narrative and turns it into a nigh incomprehensible one. Let me give you an example. Spoilers for Metallic Rouge. Rouge and Naomi are hunting down members of the Immortal Nine, the antagonists of the story, basically. They're doing this on behalf of Alethea, an organization that is brought up many times within the first half of Metallic Rouge. We only ever hear Alethea talked about, so once we finally see Alethea, the story should start to feel more clear and start establishing a status quo the viewer can get used to. But nope! The second we finally get to Alethea, Naomi is actually revealed to be the divine facilitator, whatever that means, to the aliens that helped humanity build the androids. So okay, we need to understand what Alethea is as well as what this means for Naomi. Nope! Immediately after this, it's revealed that the Immortal Nine are actually not not as evil as we thought and start making Rouge question whether she should be with Alethea at all. Okay, so that's a lot. I wonder how we're going to be. Nope! Rouge's supposed evil twin sister lookalike then shows up and now wants to fight her to the death. Wow, this really is a lot. Can we please slow down? Nope! It is then revealed that Rouge's evil twin sister is actually not evil at all and was being brainwashed by an evil space circus and actually wants to be Rouge's friend. And all of this happens in just a few episodes. When you start to have so many plot twists back to back, they start to lose all their meaning. This was right when things should have started to make sense, but now it's just more confusing than ever. Watching this anime doesn't feel like watching a story unfold. It just feels like watching a bunch of stuff happen with no real rhyme or reason at all. And it was at this point that I started to notice something. Metallic Rouge is a short anime, only 13 episodes long, but the plot and characters feel like they belong to an anime that's much longer and grander than what we're actually watching. And I think that this is where the reason for Metallic Rouge's shortcomings become apparent. A special screening for Metallic Rouge's 8th and 9th episodes was held in Tokyo on March 3rd of this year, where a few of the staff that worked on Metallic Rouge was in attendance and discussed the show's production. One of the most notable staff members at this event was Masahiko Minami, Metallic Rouge's producer as well as the CEO of Bones in general. And something he said during the screening stood out to me. Recently, due to various circumstances, it's difficult to plan an original robot anime. In such a situation, I'd like to create a work that will make viewers say, I want to see more. And to me, this speaks volumes. The entertainment industry, in a lot of ways, is like gambling. You can spend years as well as massive amounts of money creating a piece of media, and yet there's no guarantee that that media is going to resonate with your audience. And if it doesn't, then congratulations, you've just wasted both your time and tons of money you could have used for something else. And anime is no different. I've said this so many times on this channel by now, but anime is arguably more popular than it's ever been. But at the same time, it's also very risky. An anime failing and not making back its money can be financially devastating. This is why studios and companies need to be wary of what they greenlight, because any wrong move could spell the end. And so there's an active effort to try and reduce this risk as much as possible, namely by either dropping or drastically reducing the budget of original projects, or aggressively pursuing and putting all your money in adaptations of works that have already proven to be popular. And yeah, this does help mitigate the risk, but at the same time, it's sad. Some of the greatest anime of all time are shows that weren't based on anything. They were just completely original works that creators wanted to make. And as we march further on into the future, it just seems like anime like this are beginning to dwindle. And it's especially sad in Metallic Rouge's case. This anime was supposed to celebrate 25 years of Bones as a studio, and they probably had a really cool, grand vision for what this anime was going to be. But because it wasn't going to be a guaranteed success, it was just never given the life and treatment that it needed. If you like Metallic Rouge, I have no problem with that. Honestly, more power to you. I'm glad you were able to enjoy it, maybe even a little jealous, because I wanted to like this show, and I tried to like this show, but I just couldn't. Not because Metallic Rouge was an intrinsically bad idea. It had the potential to be something really special. Unfortunately, it just wasn't allowed to be.